Welcome back to the Death Row and Executions channel. I'm Paco Rivera. Okay, so this was all very sudden. This month of April, the state of South Carolina added a death row inmate to the list of upcoming executions, and the execution is scheduled to take place just a few weeks after making that announcement. An execution set for April 29. And not only that, South Carolina has stopped lethal injections with drugs, so death row inmate Richard Bernard Moore will have the option of choosing death by electric chair or firing squad. Yes, South Carolina last month reinstated death by firing squad for executions. I'll get into the backstory of how Richard Moore ended up on death row in a moment. First, some death row news. Prosecutors in the state of Tennessee will seek the death penalty for James Mahoney in the shooting death of Robertson County Sheriff's Deputy Savannah Puckett. Puckett's ex-boyfriend, James Mahoney, is accused of killing the 22-year-old deputy inside her home before setting the house on fire back on January 23rd of this year. She died of multiple gunshot wounds to most of her body. Puckett had previously reported that her ex-boyfriend had been showing up to her home uninvited. Last month, street gang member Jesse Michael Gomez, who is now 58, was sentenced to death in California for the 2016 shooting death of San Diego police officer Jonathan J.D. de Guzman, who was 43 years old. Gomez was also convicted of attempted murder for wounding Guzman's partner, Officer Wade Irwin, during the shootings. Irwin had been hospitalized for a month and later testified at the trial. The state of Oklahoma will be seeking the death penalty for a lawyer. Her name is Keegan Kelly Haraz, along with her former client and lover, Barry Roland Titus. The lovers are accused of 3 counts of deliberate and intentional first-degree murder and 1 count of first-degree burglary that occurred in 2019. The couple robbed and killed Titus's ex-girlfriend and her parents. Prior to the murders, Titus had been facing felony charges for assaulting his ex-girlfriend, and attorney Keegan Kelly Haraz had represented him in that case. Talk about a possible story for 2020 Dateline or 48 Hours. On September 16 of the year 1999, Richard Bernard Moore, heavily addicted to cocaine, entered Nicky's Speedy Mart convenience store in Spartanburg, South Carolina, at about 3 o'clock in the morning with the intent to rob it. Now, jumping ahead a bit, it should be noted from all the reports in this case that Richard Moore entered the store without a weapon. And you may ask yourself if this was not a case of self-defense, as Richard Moore's defense and opponents of capital punishment have claimed. Or will you agree with the way the judicial system seemed to work in this case in South Carolina, that if you commit a crime and someone ends up dead, that qualifies for the death penalty, regardless of the circumstances? Once inside the store, Richard Moore first walked around the coolers and then approached the store clerk, James Mahoney. Apparently, some words were exchanged between the two men. As it turns out, the store clerk, James Mahoney, had access to 2 guns behind the counter. Mahoney reached for one of them, a .45 caliber handgun, but Richard Moore, who was much larger than the store clerk, quickly reached for it himself. There was a struggle, and Moore overpowered the much smaller man and wrestled the gun away from Mahoney. James Mahoney then grabbed the other gun and fired a shot that hit Richard Moore in the left arm. At that point, Richard Moore fired back, striking the store clerk directly in the heart, killing him. DNA evidence later showed that Richard Moore bleeding profusely from the gunshot wound to his arm, walked all around behind the counter, most probably searching for cash. After stepping over James Mahoney's body several times in doing so, he eventually drove off with over $1,400 in a money bag. Richard Moore then stopped at a residence, it was reported, nearby to try to buy some cocaine, but he was unsuccessful. Now, also inside the Nicky's convenience store that night, the only customer was a man named Terry Dean Haddon, who was playing on a video poker game machine nearby, something he regularly did after getting off late from his second shift job. Haddon would later testify that he saw Richard Moore and Mahoney struggling for the store clerk's gun when Moore then grabbed a hold of it and pointed it at him and shot. Haddon said he threw himself to the floor and pretended to be dead. A short time later, he heard the door's ringer when the door opened and then closed again, and he heard Moore's pickup truck start up its motor. He looked over and watched it drive away onto Highway 221. Haddon got up and saw the store clerk lying face down on the floor, dead, with a gun right beside his hand. He then called 911. The manhunt for Richard Moore began. About 1.5 miles away from the store, a sheriff's deputy heard a loud bang. He then saw that Richard Moore's pickup truck had crashed into a telephone pole. When the deputy approached, Moore was sitting in the back of the truck, still bleeding profusely from his left arm. The deputy ordered Richard Moore onto the ground as Moore was yelling, "I did it, I did it, I give up." The deputy would later find in the front seat of the truck a money bag soaked in blood. The .45 caliber handgun that was used to kill the store clerk was found nearby on the side of the highway. Richard Moore was tried for the crimes about 2 years later, in October of 2001. The jury convicted him of all counts. In a separate sentencing hearing, the jury recommended a sentence of death. That case was tried by Trey Gowdy, who during the penalty phase spoke of Richard Moore's multiple convictions on weapons and burglary charges since the 1980s, as well as violent domestic assaults against women. Some of those women also testified during the penalty phase of the trial. Richard Moore has been on death row for 21 years. He would later admit that he entered the convenience store with the intent to rob it, but once inside, he found himself in a situation where he was fighting for his life. The defense has also argued, however, that there was no proof that Richard Moore entered the convenience store with the intention of robbing it in the first place, regardless of the money bag covered in blood from the store that was found in his possession. This is turning out to be quite a busy month for executions. Remember that there will be both Oscar Franklin Smith and Carl Wayne Bunchen on April 21st, Franklin in Tennessee and Bunchen in Texas, Melissa Lucio in Texas on April 27th, and Richard Moore in South Carolina on the 29th. Not long after will be Carmen Deck in Missouri on May 3rd, and I will be uploading a video on him in the coming days. For more death row stories, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you are alerted when the next one comes out. I'm Paco Rivera. Bye for now.